Our story is really old, starting from 13,000 years ago, when the people living nearby the rivers first drank beers in ancient time. Beers originally comes from grain and is only liquid. They put barley in water and let it ferment. While fermenting, the barley sugar slowly comes out into the water, and the yeast in the water starts eating the sugars. When these yeast eat the sugars, alcohol is produced. When alcohol is produced, the beer is ready. With the same barley we make alcohol from, we can also make bread. So it can be said that beer is like liquid barley bread, but with a bit of alcohol in it. Many archaeologists believe that the reason humans started farming wasn't because of bread, but because they wanted to make beers. Because they preferred hunting and eating meat rather than having bread, which has fewer nutrients than meat. Beer is so ancient that its age is older than making old bread. That's why they're not sure if they planted barley first for bread or for alcohol. But one thing we're sure of is that farmers have been making beer for 13,000 years. Regular farming made life easier for humans. Also, because of this organization and order, it led to the formation of small and large communities alongside farmlands. When we examine any ancient civilization, we see that it started with farming. Some farmers gathered together and formed a village, then formed a city, and elected a leader, and civilizations were formed. Before farming became widespread in this way, there were no civilizations. The first civilizations emerged between the rivers, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, and in Egypt alongside the Nile River. In both places, good weather, suitable soil, and abundant water were the most important foundations of a civilization. Archaeologists have discovered all the things we've talked about, but the first writings about barley and beers were made by the Sumerians 3,000 years before Christ, which means 5,000 years ago. They wrote about both beers and barley bread, and it's clear from their writings that they consumed both together. Several hundred years later, in Egypt, they also wrote about alcohol, and it's evident that the Egyptians also learned to make alcohol. It's interesting to know that the Egyptians really enjoyed beer, and that's why they also put beer for the dead. In ancient Egyptian tombs, along with other items they put for the deceased, there was also alcohol. Production and consumption of beer have continued for thousands of years, but no one knew what caused the alcohol in beers until we reached the 20th century, when Louis Pasteur figured out the reactions that produce alcohol. In ancient times, people believed that gods created alcohol, and it was the gods who caused alcohol to appear in beers. The ancient Egyptians also held the first beer parties, and one party called Tek, which translates to drunk, where everyone drank beers on that day. The Egyptians were so fond of beers that they even made it a god, and they called it the goddess Ninkasi. If you've seen the Hammurabi Code written on stone, one of the first laws in this writing is that the order was given that beers should be cheap. Now, did they make this drink with barley only? In the Middle Eastern regions, yes, but ancient Chinese made this drink with rice. You might wonder why this alcohol didn't go towards Europe, because Europeans didn't like it. Ancient Greeks and Romans detested beers and said we should only drink wine. The first Europeans to consume beers were the Celts, who are today's Irish, but were in Europe in ancient times. And a few hundred years after the Celts, the northern Germans, who were somewhat wild, started drinking beer and became very fond of it. So much so that when the Roman Empire fell apart and the Germans formed the Holy Roman Empire, beers became the most famous drink in Europe. In the Holy Roman Empire, there were many strange laws, and one of these laws was that no woman had the right to make beers, and only men were allowed to make it. The church said if a woman made alcohol, she was a witch, and for this reason, no woman dared to do anything like that. By the 15th century, the city of Hamburg in Germany had become the world center for alcohol production, meaning they produced more alcohol than anywhere else and sold it to the entire world of that day. According to research, in those years, Hamburg produced 30 million liters of alcohol annually. The Middle East and Europe used barley for this drink, while the Chinese used rice. But there was also an ancient civilization on the other side of the world called the Inca Empire. Did the Incans also know how to make alcohol? I must say yes, and they also made their own alcohol, but with corn. As you know, corn is a native plant of America and has been exported from America to the whole world. Interestingly, American corn alcohol was called chicha in ancient times, and this name is still used in the world, and they call alcoholic corn water chicha. It's interesting to know that in the Incan civilization, there was no money, and they used chicha, or corn beers, for buying and selling. For example, if they wanted to buy wheat, they would pay with a little chicha instead of wheat, or when they worked, they were given chicha. One of the most advanced civilizations in South America was the Inca civilization. This popularity of chicha made the Incan civilization economically strong and more advanced than all the civilizations on the American continent. In the American War of Independence, soldiers fighting were given 1 liter of chicha a day, and to ensure soldiers got their chicha, they went to war. We arrive at the year 1920, when America is a 144-year-old country. At that time, the American government saw that most people had become alcoholic. Therefore, the government ordered that from that week onwards, drinking and buying and selling any kind of alcohol is prohibited. From then on, alcohol became very scarce, and if people wanted to obtain alcohol, they had to buy it from gangsters, and it was very expensive. And if the police caught you, they would take you to jail. This law remained in place for 13 years until the American government reviewed it and realized that banning alcohol not only didn't reduce alcohol consumption, but it also increased the number of criminals and heavy drinkers, making the situation worse overall. For this reason, in 1933, alcohol was legalized again, but strict laws were added for consuming this beverage, such as age restrictions. Currently, beer is a global beverage, and annually, 190 billion liters of beer are consumed worldwide. After water, tea, and coffee, beer is the 4th most consumed beverage in the world. Now, let's see what alcohol does to our bodies. Doctors believe that moderate alcohol consumption is beneficial for heart disease and can lower blood sugar levels. Alcohol also contains some vitamins such as vitamin A, vitamin B12, vitamin E, vitamin D, and vitamin K. However, doctors say that if someone drinks alcohol for the sake of vitamins, they are mistaken because the amount of vitamins alcohol provides is not enough to be beneficial. And if you want to drink more alcohol to get more vitamins, it will harm you. The first problem alcohol can cause is addiction. And if you drink it every day, you will definitely become addicted to it. Excessive beer consumption, or any alcoholic beverage, has significant effects on the liver and can make the liver fatty or even kill you. You should know that it's the alcohol in beers that does this to your body. Wine or other alcoholic beverages are also harmful, but the good thing about beers is that it has less alcohol content. One of the worst side effects of drinking alcohol is that it is very fattening because this drink is full of carbohydrates, and the reason for the large stomach of alcoholics is also this. In any case, it is better not to drink, but if you do want to drink, drink responsibly.